mayor said about cuts to the fire department's budget, there were no reductions that were made that would have impacted the situation. The fire chief here had a slightly different take. She said, "We are screaming to be properly funded. And yes, the budget was cut and it did impact our ability to provide service."
Well, we are back on Real Time with Bill Maher today. And of course, he's still talking about the fires, the wildfires that have been raging across parts of Los Angeles. I haven't heard about it for the last couple days, so frankly, I don't even know what the situation is. As I record this video is just a couple days old. But yeah, they're going to be talking about this for a while because apart from the fires themselves, which caused plenty of damage, there's the whole DEI thing going on. And is DEI responsible for the fact that there was no water in the fire hydrants in the Pacific Palisades? Is DEI responsible for the fact that nobody had a plan or a proper plan or a properly funded plan to fight wildfires, which are not at all a new phenomenon in this area, in this part of the country? So even somebody like Bill Maher, who's, I guess, describes himself as kind of a libertarian, left of center type, he's a bit of a contrarian, but he does make some good points. And of course, on other things, he kind of takes the opposite way of what I would say. But let's get into it and see what he and his guests have to say about the political firestorm in Southern California.
And finally, new rule, we may not be able to do much about the weather, but we do need a better plan for putting out a burning city than waiting for rain. America is so partisan now that even when there's a disaster of any kind, so many people choose to defend their own team, even over death. A lot of Democrats in this one-party state this week went right to, "Don't blame politicians, you can't do anything about the wind." Which is exactly half true, the wind part. Yes, fire is a tough fight out here, and yes, global warming absolutely makes it worse. But that's largely out of our control. What are we going to do, pass a ballot measure to make sure Chinese stop burning coal? It's also, yes, undeniably true that LA is built in a stupid place to build a city. But when it's not on fire, it's really quite lovely. And it's my home. And stupid as its origin may be, it's not going anywhere. Axios ran a story on how getting the water out of the hydrants in Pacific Palisades was more complicated than it seems. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's very complicated. That's why I pay 13% of my income in this state every year to people who I assumed were working on things like this.
Wow, listen to all that clapping by Bill Maher's audience. They sound like a bunch of racists to me. Aren't they in favor of DEI and affirmative action?
When asked why so many of the hydrants in the Palisades ran out of water, Governor Newsom said the local folks are trying to figure that out. Yeah, you got to do that before the fire. At least in the Palisades, the hydrants were still there. 300 other ones around the city are just gone, stolen for parts. One of the 3 reservoirs for the Palisades was offline at the one time of year when it was most needed. LA's Mayor Karen Bass, the Nero of American politics, was fiddling in Ghana while the city burned and later placed the blame on 8 months of negligible rain and winds that have not been seen in LA in at least 14 years. Yeah, that's not that long a time. Maybe look in the history books to see how our ancestors handled it back in 2 and 11.
Yeah, that's a pretty weak excuse from Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles. I'd be interested if any of you listening are from that part of the world, what you think about all this. Definitely let us know in the comments. I would like to hear from someone actually on the ground, because from outside it looks pretty crazy.
The mayor said about cuts to the fire department's budget, there were no reductions that were made that would have impacted the situation. The fire chief here had a slightly different take. She said, "We are screaming to be properly funded. And yes, the budget was cut, and it did impact our ability to provide service. And by the looks of all the fire engines in the boneyard out of service because we didn't fix them, she's right. Exposed power lines keep causing fires and keep not getting buried underground because it's expensive. I've heard people say, do you want to pay more taxes to fund this? No. I want you to use the exorbitant taxes you already collect to prioritize it.
Well, that seems pretty reasonable. Yes, Californians pay, notoriously, they pay a lot of taxes. That's interesting about the overhead lines catching on fire. Now, the one thing I complain about where I live in Belgium, which, speaking of mismanagement at all levels of government, you know, it's hard to top Belgium, believe me, in Western Europe at least. But one thing they do here is virtually all power lines are underground. I'm talking about power lines, you know, that go to houses, the local distribution network. The high voltage lines, they're on big pylons, kind of like in the States. But yeah, the ones that go to houses, those are all underground. Same with the cable and all that for your internet and all that. So not only does it not have this kind of problem like he's describing here, but also, you know, in the event there's ice, they don't get pulled down, you know, by ice forming on the cables, like can happen in some places. And also, it's just less visual pollution, frankly. I'm always surprised when I go back to the States to see all these overhead power lines everywhere. I forget that that's the norm, I guess, in most places in the States.
The power lines that cut through Topanga weren't upgraded because it endangered an herb, the milk vetch, which sounds like something they serve at Passover. I mean, talk about not seeing the forest for the trees. You know what the absolute worst thing for the environment is? Wildfires. A 22 study found that the smoke from just the two in 2020 wiped out 18 years of carbon reduction in the state, which means we suffered the pain of driving those early model Priuses for nothing.
My God, how things have changed. Bill and his audience slamming the whole climate change grift. Wow. I won't get into what I think about climate change here in this particular video. But yeah, one wildfire wipes out all those carbon emission savings they've made in 18 years. Really makes you think. Gets the old noggin jogging.
California is the place that spends money and gets nothing, which is why you may have noticed when the fires broke out, no one escaped by high-speed rail. We have the highest marginal tax rate in America, higher than almost all other states, and soon Greenland. What is included for that? Breadsticks? Because it clearly doesn't cover fire. That's government's job. Protect us from crime, violence, theft, fire. I'm not saying Alabama would have done better with fires by fighting them with prayer in school.
Oh, here comes Bill, starting to slam other states, especially a southern state like Alabama. You just can't help being one of those left coast liberal types, you know, who looks down at other parts of the country, the flyover states or the southern states. And of course he has to mention religion because he looks down on people who believe in God. Yeah, very interesting. But yeah, this whole fire, this should be a massive story. I hope it does go on for a long time. And as I record this is January 20th, 2025. So Trump was just sworn in today. I didn't watch the inauguration, but maybe he will weigh in on this whole thing because he likes to stir things up. Yeah, very interesting. Like I said, let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any specific comments, or from because you live there in that area, I would definitely love to hear from you. I've been reading all the comments recently. I reply to some, but I can't reply to all of them, of course. But feel free to disagree with me. Just keep it respectful, and I'll be happy to engage. In the meantime, please like and subscribe. It really helps me grow the channel and continue making content for you.